nice weather. Too bad we can't have the meeting outside tonight.
It's still hot.
I thought it was pretty nice right now. I'm sorry. No, but I can, you can send me an email and I can send you one.
I'm Deborah Dedman.
Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. Oh, nice to meet you.
Me a couple of times with
Oh,
properties.
oh, good. Hopefully I was helpful.
You were.
Oh, good. Thank you.
No, I'm gonna start that.
Oh, there are some more people coming. Evening. There's a sign-in sheet if you'd like to sign in. Thank you. Okay, it's a little after 5. I think we can start. Um, One thing I want you to know is, first of all, we're streaming. So if you don't understand what I'm saying and you want to go back and look at something, it'll be streamed and you can do that. Little housekeeping, there is a sign-in sheet. We did run out of handouts. So if you want one, just email me. So actually, I'm Mark Millstone. My email is very simple. It's mark with a K at carefree.org. And feel free, a lot of times people don't like to stand up at a public function to talk about questions or whatnot. Excuse me. So if you like to send anonymous comments, you can send them right to my email. If you can't hear me, tell me to speak up, interrupt, tell me to speak up. And later on, when we get to the questions, a lot of times we can't hear questions. I'll try to reiterate what the question was. If I forget and you didn't hear, please stop me. So with that, I think we'll jump right into it. And thank you all for coming. We're here to talk about our municipal traffic calming plan, our policy at this point. So this is our second workshop. The information we give out tonight is going to be the same as the last one. This is just for the folks who couldn't make the last one, or if people wanted to come for a second time, that's fine too. So this is our main reason for traffic calming. We want to reduce incidents on our roadways. This happened, not this past October, but the October before. And not only did this happen once, it happened a second time. I think it was within 4 months, one way or the other, of this situation. So at that point, I jumped into gear and said, we got to do something. And then we took it back and we said, really, we need to have a policy so it's transparent and that everybody has a voice in what we're doing. So that's why we're here today. So talking about traffic calming, from time to time, I get calls with people telling me that the speed on their road is very much in excess of what it should be. Somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to die. We need to do something about that. I also get a lot of calls about cut-through traffic on our local roads that they shouldn't be really using as cut-through roads. So we're taking all this into account, and again, we came up with a policy that we think is reasonable. And let me just point out that our policy was drafted by myself, but it's really your traffic calming policy. So we need your input because we want to make this a policy that everybody agrees to. And the policy, because of all the frequent requests, we want to develop a uniform policy that's going to work for anybody in any part of the town. And we want it to be collaboration amongst the residents that are having the problems as well as the town. So it's a 5-step process that we're looking at. And again, this is just a draft of what we come up with. If you don't like the 5 steps, you can tell me about that later. And I forgot to note that my presentation, and first of all, I talk really fast. I'm a New Yorker, so if I'm going too fast, just remind me to slow down. My presentation is going to be about 15 or 20 minutes. The rest of the time is for questions and answers. And you'll notice I'm going to the water bottle a lot. I have a medical condition that drives me out when I talk, so I apologize for hitting the water bottle. So, step one. Yes, it's just a water bottle. Thanks, Ralph. So step one is to contact me, the town engineer. And then, you know, it can be in person, it can be on a phone call. We just want to hear what's going on and what your concerns are. That's very important to us. And my number one feature, I've been a traffic engineer for, God, I lost track. I think we're looking at like 37, 38 years, mostly roadway design. So I'm intimately familiar with roadway issues. But I don't have eyes and ears everywhere throughout the town. Even though we're not huge, there's a lot of things that I don't know that's going on. So the residents here are my eyes and ears for situations all over the town. And I appreciate when you come in and talk to me about your issues. And I'll try my best to help you. I don't guarantee that we have a solution to fix everything. That's not going to happen, but we'll try our best to rectify situations. So step one is you come in and talk to me. We have a set of criteria that we set up because we're not going to address a single resident's concern about a roadway. We want to have a group of people and we want to have criteria because, as you well know, our funds are limited. So we want to make sure we're using them expeditiously to really improve the safety conditions. So some of our criteria, this isn't all of them, but just some of them, we're looking at street segments that are between 660 feet and a mile long. Anything below that or over that doesn't really fit in what we want to do. The street that's planned could only be motor vehicles in one direction. And let me expand on that. So we would never do a 4-lane roadway. So forget about Tom Darlington, forget about Cave Creek Road. Carefree Highway is in our roadway. Carefree Highway. So we're only going to do roads that are one direction in each direction. We won't do a 2-lane road. Traffic calming doesn't really work for 2-lane road or 4-lane roads, I should say, 2 in each direction. The street has to have between 300 and 3,000 vehicles per day. Now, we've had discussions and comments at our last meeting that some of the roads may not hit the 300 limit. we don't really have any kind of volumes. We're working on getting counters in-house so we can set them out on any street we want to figure out what kind of volumes are there. But we've also discussed that if you have less than 300 vehicles a day, traffic calming maybe isn't really the most cost-effective method for you. So that's a big issue with us. What else do I have on the list? At least 40% of the traffic has to travel 5 miles per hour or more above the posted speed limit. And then we have an actual secondary one, or at least 20% of the traffic has to move at speeds 10 miles an hour or more than the posted speed limit. The street has to be paved. We're never going to do an unpaved road. And then the street has to have more than 50% directional residential access, or is a pedestrian or bicycle route. Those are very important to us also. So those are some of the criteria, it's not all of them. So then we look at step 2. After the residents or resident has come to me to talk about their issues, then we look at our criteria and we see if it meets our criteria and maybe would be a good opportunity for traffic calming improvement. So then what we do is we ask them, or the residents that are concerned, to submit a letter of interest as shown there. So we're looking at least 50% of the residents on the street to be able to sign this form, again, because we don't want to spin our wheels and go through all the motions and find out only 2 people on a street of 100 residents really want this. So we want to make sure that it's a proven situation, a real big issue, and so that we can do something about it. There will be an application fee for the letter of interest form. And the reason we brought that up and the cost sharing is because we want to have the residents have a vested interest. Again, this isn't just people complaining about the speeds on a road. We want to make sure they're willing to ante up with the cost to help us make the improvements, because again, we don't have a huge amount of funding to do these projects. After step 2, we look at step 3. Oh, if the letter of interest comes in and it's signed by more than 50% of the residents or whatnot, then we'll collect data. So then we'll set out our tubes, or we've just seen a new device that's somewhat similar to a radar speed sign, but it's temporary and it's movable, and we can set it up on the streets of interest, and we can gather the data for speeds as well as capacity. So that's very important to us. We want to make sure we have all those bases covered. So then the residents we'll document the outcome of our data collection, and again find out if it meets our needs for a traffic solution. Step 4, we initiate a neighborhood petition. And the reason we're doing this is because, well, it's several reasons, but again, we want to make sure that the neighborhood is in agreement that something needs to be done, as well as they're willing to take up speed humps or curb bulb outs or whatever. We have, as I said at the last meeting, we have a numerous amount of tools in our toolbox. A lot of them would probably not be agreeable to a lot of the residents, but we'll look at each specific situation and come up with a solution that not only the town agrees, but the residents agree with also. The other part of this is we're looking at a neighborhood petition, but we're also looking, and anybody who has a handout, we look at people within 1,000 feet of the street that we're going to put the improvements on. And so it would be 500 feet either side. So, and the reason we do that is because, as a for instance, the people on Langwood Lane have come to me and asked for a solution. That's initially the first priority we're looking at. But they've told me, which I didn't really understand, is that Langwood Lane is actually a cut-through street for anybody avoiding the signal at Carefree Highway. Okay? So now, if we put up speed humps on Langwood Lane, similar to what we did for Bloody Basin, now some of the volume of traffic is going to find another route because they hate the bump over the speed humps. So that's why we ask for people not just within the immediate street, but within a certain amount of distance on either side, because their streets may be affected by what we do on the primary street. Yes. Yes. Well, again, there's a numerous things. Oh, I'm sorry. So they asked, he asked about what's in our toolbox. We have a myriad amount of things in our toolbox. The simplest and cheapest would be we would paint the speed limit on the street. So as if you see directional arrows for turn lanes, excuse me, we would just say 30 miles per hour on the street. How good that works, I don't know. We would find out if we do it, but that would be the simplest and cheapest. The other ones that we find to be relatively effective and efficient are speed humps, such as Bloody Basin. Now, our staff put those in. Anybody familiar with that? Initially, we put speed bumps, which are almost the shape of a parking stop, you know, almost that shape, not quite. They were extremely aggressive, and it worked really well until we got so many complaints. Those are better used in like a parking lot, like let's say the Hampton Inn. That has become a cross through, and they're asking for advice on what to do there. So we took out the speed bumps and put in speed humps, lower profile. I think they're only 3 inches high at the maximum height. Much better. We still get complaints with people in low clearance cars because you're going to feel it. And then, you know, when we first put them out, we had some people that were complainers and didn't like it. So we had a person who would beep his horn each time he went over one of them, just to show his displeasure. Luckily, that only lasted for a month or so. But and in a little while, I'm going to go into the pros and cons. So some people love speed humps, some people hate them. That's why we're going to work with all the residents. Oh yes. So what I call so artificially, anybody that knows the crosswalks on Ridgeview Place, we put what are called dagmars or buttons in the road to artificially narrow the pavement. That was an interim project. We are coming back very soon. We're going to go out to bid to actually make that a more permanent condition. And by what we're going to do is we're going to take the curbing, and instead of having the buttons or dagmars, we're going to actually bring the curbing out and make it physically narrow, you know, because people run over the buttons. You know, it's not a good experience, but people run over them. Curbing, people are not going to run over. They hit curbing a lot, and you'll see tire marks, but they will not run over them. Excuse me a second. So one of the conditions on Ridgeview, it was an improvement, but again, it's an interim project. And one of the problems we have is that we did not move the flashing beacons. They're called RRFBs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And they give off wig-wag fashion lighting, highly visible, more visible at night, of course. But we did not move those. So those are still well on the outside of the roadways. And I can say now, every once in a while I'll go down there and hit the button at all times. And I still think about 40% of the people are still ignoring those lights. And I think one of the reasons is because they're well outside. So by putting the curb bulb outs, we're going to bring the flashing beacons in a lot closer to the roadway. if you will, they're almost gonna be in your face, you know? So people can't say, oh, I didn't see them. So that curb bulb outs is another thing. The other thing are called chicanes, and that's, I think it's a French word, and essentially that means kind of zigzagging in the road. So what you do with respect to that is you put curb bulb outs, but you put them staggered along the road. So you take a tangent road, which means a straight road, and you put these curb bulb outs so that the traffic has to wiggle around and they can't be doing 40 or 45 in these wiggles. Now those are a lot more expensive because you're building curb and gutter. So that's more expensive than just putting speed humps up. What else do we have? There are diverters, and these are some things that may never happen because, excuse me, diverters will, in a sense, take an intersection and disallow you to go in a certain direction. So like they're skewed medians, if you will, and they'll only allow you, so in other words, where we had a through road, now you're not going to be able to go through anymore. You're going to have to take a left or a right or what have you. The biggest feature would be to close off a roadway. We've been discussing that, and for a lot of reasons, that's going to be a hard push. Again, Langwood Lane, I threw that out there. And Langwood Lane is an issue because it intersects with the entrance and exit to the boulders. So it's a major intersection. It doesn't have the slip lanes like Stagecoach does. And slip lanes, what I mean by that is if you're going westbound on Stagecoach and you hit Tom Darlington, you can take a left. You still have to cross the traffic that's going north, but you can take a left and you have a sheltered lane on the other side, and you can sit there and wait until the traffic lets up southbound. So Langwood doesn't have that opportunity. So there are a lot of things, and we do have a lot of incidents at the intersection of Langwood and Tom Darlington. So we're looking at all kinds of solutions for that. Those are just some of them. Again, there's probably 50 different tools.
Actual light, speed limit lights that tell you how fast you're going on the road actually work. Happen to see people, I see people do like 45, 50.
Thank you for that.
And it's 30,
Yes, thank you for that question. So a couple of months ago at the town council meeting, somebody stood up and said, we don't have a speeding problem. And I told them, just sit next to a radar speed sign and see how often it's green, okay? I come in Scottsdale Road every morning, and I am the only one who makes that radar speed turn green. Everybody I see in front of me, it's still red, which means they're going in excess of the speed limit. So we definitely have a speeding problem. And you know, Tom Darlington's a big one, Cave Creek's a big one, because they're major arterials. But we have this problem all over town, even our local roads. So I would say, in answer to your question, maybe not really work. And I don't know if I should go there, but I like to bring up that they have radar speed signs that have what's called a faux flash. So people think they're taking your picture, but they really are not. I mean, they are flashing, but there's no picture taken. And I wanted to go that route, and Gary pretty much told me, you know, we'd get sued because, you know, but then again, once people understand that it's a faux flash, it's not going to do anything. Well, and thank you for that question. So I like to say we don't have enforcement authority, but Gary always pulls me back. We have enforcement authority through the MCSO, but how often they can be here and everything is all up in the air. I really wish we had our own police department and I could send them out to a street every other day, you know, in a different part of town. We don't have that luxury. So, yeah, correct. And somebody told me the other day, and I drive by often their office on Cave Creek Road, and you see there's 8 vehicles in the parking lot parked. You know, every time I'm by, there's 8 vehicles parked, and I'm like, what the heck are they doing? You know, but anyway, so, and thank you for that. One of the other tools, which is pretty easy, are radar speed signs. So that's a good tool too. Not cheap, but that's an option too. Whether they work, I don't know. Oh, no. We're looking at like anywhere from 5 to 20, depending upon how intricate they are. And some of them collect data, some of them don't, you know, so that's another tool. So let me keep going. Step 5 is after, oh, I'm sorry. I'll, I'll give that question to Gary.
About two-thirds of, my name's Gary Neese, I'm the town administrator. About two-thirds of the revenue that comes from a ticket goes to the county as well as the state. About one-third comes back to the town to offset the cost of administering the courts. The rest of it is the incarceration system and judicial system in the state and trying to offset that. So it is not a revenue generator. There is something called photo radar, which is not popular. It's something that we have discussed in years past here. That's an absolute. If this community is concerned about traffic speeds, you could look to the town of Paradise Valley. Nobody speeds through Paradise Valley anymore. They used to speed before. Why? Because you don't get one ticket. You get multiple tickets if you drive through there. Because they have mobile units and they have units at each intersection. They have a digital fence around the community that records every license plate that comes in and out of the community. So they have a very sophisticated system. Since we contract with MCSO, there's protocol that we have to go through to get MCSO to process photo radar tickets, and then we have to change and allow for our system, our court system, which is the AJAX system, processed through the administrative office of the court, to change it to allow for the processing of photo radar. Those two items have not changed within the structure of MCSO and the structure of the AJAX software system that we contract with. Other communities such as Paradise Valley and Scottsdale have their own software system that allows them to process it. They have their own police department. So there's costs associated with that, but it is very effective. So there's low revenue there, but not much. Some of that goes also to the third-party vendor that you contract with. So that's an absolute. The MCSO officer is only as good as that officer being there catching those bad actors. That officer gets calls all the time. He has to leave that post, and then obviously once he's gone, the speeding picks up again. So patrol, yes, we have a patrol officer here that specializes in traffic patrol between October and April. And then we have a third of a beat throughout the year that concentrates on public safety, and sometimes we ask them to do special patrols as well too. So we do have traffic patrol, believe it or not, but it's only as good as them being there catching those bad actors. It's not a panacea.
Thanks, Gary. Yes.
Mark, are you going to speak to people running stop signs? Stagecoach Pass is horrible.
Again, that would be an enforcement issue. I don't have any enforcement authority. Yeah, we,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I appreciate that. I wasn't aware of that. I do know that Cave Creek Road and Tom Darlington, I get complaints that nobody knows how to drive a four-way stop. You know, they're all sitting there waiting for the other person to go. I wasn't aware of Stagecoach, but I thank you for that.
Both at Mule Train
And Mule Train. Pima? Pima is a whole other issue. We have a project coming online, design in '25, construction in '26, for that section of Pima from Stagecoach to Cave Creek Road. Right now, the intersection at Stagecoach and Pima is terrible. just yesterday leaving town, I had a motorcycle cut in front of me to continue right across. And of course, a motorcycle with no helmet on, and I'm like, and it was, I almost had to jam on my brakes. It was that close. So we do have semis up and down Pima all the time. It's a big, important intersection, and it needs to have a solution to it. So it's a big issue. Well, not necessarily, well, so another tool, this brings up the reminder, is roundabouts. So a roundabout would probably work really well at the intersection I was just talking about, Stagecoach and Pima. Big bucks, I mean, they're $1.5 million minimum without any right of way. So big bucks, but again, that's another tool also. Yes? Well, so Pima Road, that roadway project is through MAG funding. It's actually through ADOT funding, but it's dispersed through MAG. MAG is the Maricopa Association of Governments, the group that kind of regulates our area as well as 32 other towns within the Maricopa County. So yes, is funds for that, yes. Yeah, so MUTCD does not recommend putting speed humps within, I think it's 250 feet of a stop sign, because it just doesn't make sense. You know, then more people would probably disobey that stop sign because they have to stop here, and then, you know, why would they stop there? Yeah, MUTCD, oh, I'm sorry. MUTCD is a manual for uniform traffic control devices. And that's what we use to put up stop signs, speed signs, whatever signs are required, as well as striping. So that's our Bible as engineers to do projects with.
So any good attorney, when the town is being sued, will say, do they comply with those standards? And so that's the book that's used in court. So we have to ensure that we're in compliance with those standards.
That's a good point, Gary. So Ridgeview Place, if you remember, prior to our interim project, used to have red flashing bulbs. Those are not legal under MUTCD. Those can only be used at a place where there is a stop condition now. So on Cave Creek Road at Schoolhouse, I think it is, they have red flashing. They're allowed to because there was a stop sign there. There is a stop sign there. So even if there's nobody crossing, you still need to stop. That's not the case with Ridgeview, and it never was. So, and again, to expand on what Gary was saying, if there's an accident and we have non-conforming devices such as Ridgeview used to have, we take on a liability as a town because we weren't conforming to the readily acceptable standards. So that's a big concern. We got to make sure we do stuff by the book. So my last slide is just once we meet and get the letter of interest, then we come up with a plan. We have to take that plan again before the council. They have to approve it. We have to find funding to do that. And then we would ask for the cost sharing, which we threw in right now to be about 10%. So as a for instance, Bloody Basin cost, and we're just talking about the materials because my staff put them in. So they were about $5,000. So 10% would be $500. And the thing I want to note there is that we're not asking one resident to pay this. We're asking everybody on the street where the improvements is going to happen to ante up the funding, to show that they're serious about traffic calming. And so, you know, if you have 10 residents on a street and you just want speed humps, you know, that's going to be now $50 per each resident. Actually, we haven't got to that point yet. I'm sorry, let me just ask it. So, no, I'm okay with one person anteing up the money if they want to do that. You know, we just need help because we can't afford to do all of these improvements. And I'm sorry. Did we determine that? Was it 250? I think we threw out 250 bucks. Yes, and the reason for that is because the data collection is going to cost us money. So either it'll cost us money because we have to buy the data collectors and set them out, or we have to hire a traffic company to come out and set up loops and you know, give us a cost proposal for that. So one way or the other, even the data collection is going to cost us money, money that we really don't have. So even though, you know, before going to the town council, we're going to have to make sure that we have funding, you know, essentially leftover funding for these type of projects. And we talked indirectly that we do have a CIP program, a capital improvement program. We may institute putting funding in there on an annual basis. I don't know, maybe 10 grand, let's say, just so that we can build up a fund and start using that amount to do some of these projects.
Let me clarify one of your remarks there, Mark. It's not that the town does not have funding, but you can imagine your neighborhood, there might be something specific to you. There's other neighborhoods throughout the community that want their issue addressed too. So you think about all the neighborhoods within the community. One neighborhood gets a certain project, another neighborhood wants the same privilege. You have to reconcile that. And so this is a way, have skin in the game, come up with a appropriate, cost conservative approach to traffic calming in your respective neighborhood, and then incrementally do it throughout the community. If that's what the neighborhoods want, that's what the community wants. But the whole idea behind this is collaboration between neighbors to talk about those issues. Because it might benefit you because it's your street, but just a little bit down the street, that person uses that street on a regular basis and gets upset because now they have to go across that speed hump or that traffic calming technique. So, yep.
Which streets, because you guys, this is what you do, which streets, give us the top two streets that you're going as far as traffic?
So this is sprinkled throughout the community. These are in neighborhoods. So we're not talking the arterial streets. So we're not talking Tom Darlington and Cave Creek Road. But we're getting questions from Langwood Lane. We're getting questions about Stagecoach. We got recent questions about Bloody Basin again. We have some on the other side. I mean, it's sprinkled throughout the community, and this probably happens 5 to 10 times a year. Different neighborhoods, believe it or not. So yeah, so it's a struggle for us.
One of the latest ones too that I just want to add is Sundance. So Sundance is the extension of Tom Darlington on the other side of Cave Creek Road. And the interesting thing is, so we're getting complaints that a lot of people are missing the turn to go to the lake. So they're driving up Sundance, towing a boat, not knowing that they can cut back around to Tranquil, doing a U-turn in Sundance with a boat trailer. So think about that. Yeah, we're getting a lot of people. Correct. Correct. Yes. Yes. It's a good option. So right now we're working with a consultant doing the downtown circulation plan. And part of that is looking at all those issues with pedestrians, with bikes, with traffic, with parking. So that's something we are definitely thinking about. Not so much on Sundance, but on other major roads. So I won't get into that because that's not traffic calming. But yeah, there is that area of pedestrians as well as bicycles that are another concern that we have to think about. Yes?
How did you come up with the 10%? Because there may be some situations where 10% is just not enough, especially when it just seems like it's almost more of a special interest
Well,
than a safety.
and thank you for that question. It's a number that we kind of just threw out there, and we're looking for everybody to respond. If you don't agree, if you think it's too high, or if it's not enough, please send me comments. One of the things we talked about recently is the 300 vehicle per day threshold. Now, what we're thinking about is if let's say you have a road that doesn't have the 300 vehicle threshold, but you really want something done. We were talking that we might entertain a project, but then we would maybe ask for the total cost of fixing that because it doesn't meet our criteria. But if it's really important to you and you're willing to ante up the funds, then yeah, we can definitely help you with that. Just a thought. I'm sorry, I saw a hand over here first.
I just wanna go back, you brought up Paradise Valley and all the speed cameras. They got all that installed, and I understand that, as he was saying, that there's a cost with a software program. So if the town of Carefree came together and we all decided that we've got too many streets with too many passerbyers, cause that's who it is, it's not the locals, us driving too fast. It's the construction people, it's the people going to the lake, it's the recreational tourists that are here. If we all came together as a community and said, hey, let's do this photo thing, and we set up some cameras like they've done in Paradise Valley. Collecting of the speed tickets themselves, would that offset the cost of those over our return on our investment in 5 years? Will we see that it's actually, maybe it's not making money in the first 5 years for the community, but after 5 years, now the community's profiting off of these speed tickets?
So that's a valid point, but how I would respond to that is, we can definitely look into it, but then I foresee the problem is, where do you put them? You know, Stagecoach Road, I hear is definitely needed, but they're gonna have a lot of,
Well,
you know,
the idea, let me clarify, the idea of photo radar is a non-starter until the administration and MCSO and the judge that has a federal order over MCSO in the processing of tickets allows them to do something like that.
Well, that's
So,
fine, I'm just
yeah,
asking
so if we could
if
do it.
there was approval to do it with the cost, the initial cost of it, return on our investment, and maybe it takes 5 years. but,
Sure.
All of a sudden Stagecoach is now back to a street that you can walk down and kids can get on a school
Yes.
bus without people blowing
fair enough, yep,
the school
absolutely,
bus stop sign, cause that's me every morning.
yeah.
I've got a kid that goes to school, and every morning I go up there and watch him get on the bus because I've had too many people coming down Stagecoach and I'm not stereotyping anybody, in Porsches,
Mhm.
doing 60 miles an hour
Sure.
past my house before they go around the Dick Rock
Sure,
corner.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, is the next guy gonna blow the stop sign because it's just going too fast? And it's like, whatever, I can make it before she flips the sign out.
Sure.
So I mean, I'm just trying to think outside
Yeah,
the box.
no, I appreciate that.
If it's good for the community, for all of us, and it puts some extra funds back into the Carefree community that we can use for other type of things that are needed, then, is it something that we should talk to the judge and the MCO and all these different people and maybe figure out what needs to really transpire because.
Well, the big thing is MCSO has to be able to process the ticket. Right now,
Is there a
a individual, to clarify. It's a law, the state law is very specific in that it speaks of a law enforcement agency. So it would have to be a municipal licensed agency within the state of Arizona. So, you would have to have your own municipal police department, which would probably cost you at least, north of $4 million. So, we pay MCSO, probably about, 550,000.
So,
And I'm not slamming them,
Yep,
but I don't know what they do, because I never see them.
yep.
Well, no, I'll explain.
so, I'm sorry, if I can get us back on the topic. So, photo enforcement is not really a traffic calming measure. So I'd like to maybe get back to that, but we can entertain your point, yes.
Two questions. One, has a letter of interest, form been filed for Stagecoach Pass yet?
No, it has not.
We will do that.
This policy has not been approved yet.
Oh, okay.
So
don't bother.
we're still discussing it.
Okay, question two. A lot of rumors running around that Stagecoach Pass will become a 4-lane road.
I have not heard that.
Okay.
I can never, I tell people never say never,
Right.
but I have not heard anything on the horizon
So
for Stagecoach Pass.
West of Mule Train, Stagecoach Pass is in the city of Scottsdale.
Right.
So what the city of Scottsdale does, don't know. I don't think they have any plans to expand that beyond the 1 lane in each direction.
Okay.
So, they might do a turn lane in the middle, a center lane, as Stagecoach, develops out and areas in Scottsdale develop out.
I didn't realize that was Scottsdale,
From Mule Train East.
Is Scottsdale?
Similarly, like Carefree Highway is all Scottsdale. The whole road is in Scottsdale.
Can I ask one question?
Sure?
We're talking about all these applications and all this stuff. I've dealt with the city of Phoenix and the historical society down in the city of Phoenix.
Sure.
And I submitted paperwork to the historical society to approve. They approve it. The city of Phoenix, they said we can't do that. It's gotta be done this way. They get back and forth. Sounds like that's what we might be dealing with, trying to get stuff done here. How long does the process take?
Well, and I appreciate that question. So you're looking at the whole engineering department. So it just has to go through me. And as a point of information, so I run the right-of-way permit program. Essentially, whenever any utility work needs to be done, they're working within our right-of-way. So at the most, once they submit a certified application, no more than 48 hours, they'll have an approval or disapproval.
But when it actually starts moving forward, would that be months, years?
Well, because we have to meet a couple times, agree on a solution, agree on a funding issue, collect data, yeah, it's gonna take a couple months. But I would do my best to move it along as quickly as possible.
So the difficult lift is not the town processing the data, the collection of the data, analyzing the data, getting it back to you, coming up with solutions. The difficult lift is the difference of opinions within the respective neighborhood. You're gonna be shocked by what people think. You see the benefits because it will slow down the traffic, what you experience, but somebody right across the street does not, so.
Decision has to be based on facts and data. If the data supports the need for whatever measure we want to call in traffic, it's gonna be based on incredible evidence.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So that needs to be running as my.
Absolutely, yep.
Mark, spoke about will get us that data.
Yeah.
The important part of that data also is there'll be a timestamp on when the peak of the bad actors are happening along that respective street. So the nice thing about that, but what we have to do from a correction perspective, because speed is a behavioral issue. To correct it, you need enforcement. And so we can then target the enforcement with MCSO, because once again, they have a large area to cover. And if we we say, be out here between 3 and 4, this is when the bad actors are impacting
Sure.
the quality of life along the street, they can target it. So that's what we're aiming to as part of the initial step of collecting that data.
So I think I have one more slide. I'd just like to get through that, and then we can continue on. Yeah, so now the pros and cons. Interestingly enough, some pros and cons are very similar. So I'll start with the pros. Hopefully, it's going to reduce the number of vehicles traveling more than 35 miles an hour, the traffic calming measures. You may also notice a reduction in the number of vehicles using that street. Another pro, they're going to be there 24/7. If you put speed humps there, they don't magically disappear at dusk and come back the next day. They're going to be there 24/7. Slower traffic might enhance the neighborhood appeal, and similarly improve comfort for bicycles and pedestrians. You have slower traffic, you're going to have a lot more comfortable bicyclers and pedestrians, and increased driver awareness. If we put speed humps out there and they don't notice they're there until they hit them the first time, they're going to remember they're there. So that's another option. And one of the things I forgot to mention is the plastic speed humps that we put on Bloody Basin are not the end all for speed humps. We just contracted to put back some asphalt speed humps, which are much more expensive than the rubber ones, but it's a much gentler slope. You don't have the real bump. So there are other options. Then just looking at the cons, they may slow emergency vehicles, although there is a way around them. If you've seen other municipalities, they have what's called speed pillows, and the speed pillows have track widths in the middle, centered over the center line, and those are based on the wheelbase of fire trucks and emergency vehicles. So when an emergency vehicle comes to a speed pillow, they don't have to slow down at all. As opposed to a speed hump, they'll have to. So minuscule slowdown. There may be increased vehicle noise because when you have a truck and a speed hump, they're going to slow down, then they're going to rev up to get over there. And if you have another one, it's going to be the same thing happening again. Another con, the residents that live right there are going to have to go over those speed humps every day to get in and out of their property. That could be a pro for certain people. Slowing traffic, they don't mind, but it might be a con for other people that don't want to be driving over these bumps several times a day. Another con, it could result in accumulation of debris. Yes, we might have to sweep that area a little more than other areas. It may detract from neighborhood appeal. On the pro side, we're saying it may enhance because we're reducing the speed, making it safer, but they're not aesthetically pleasing. And there are ways where you can put curb bulb outs or median improvements and put plantings and flowers in there. So you can make them aesthetically pleasing. And again, this is something that we would work in collaboration with the residents. And the final con I have there is that it could impact driveway access. As an engineer, I'll try to make sure that that doesn't happen, but in some circumstances, you can't help but impact driveway access. So that's something to be aware of. And I think that's it. So now we're open for questions again. Chicanes, or? Yep. Bless you.
Okay, but, what I was getting at is, he mentioned about the school bus. Once they pass his house, they get about 40, 50 miles an hour to our house. We could no longer pull out of our driveway because it's on a curve and a hill. So we actually extended our driveway to the opposite end of our property to get out safely. We had to do that for safety,
Understood.
yes.
So, one thing I'd like to note is that I have not heard any complaints about Stagecoach, other than the speed. But now I'm hearing it a lot, so maybe this is one we add to our list.
Text Fleming and say, hey, it's busy, and now he's like, I've been transferred to another location. I would
Right.
literally text Officer Fleming
You
and
would,
say,
yeah.
hey, today's a good day to come write tickets, and he'd text me later and say, I wrote 17 tickets in 6 hours.
Gosh.
And I'm giving them 15 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Oh, my
So, I mean,
gosh.
he's giving a huge cushion, and
Yeah.
he's still writing 17 tickets in 6 hours?
Yes,
Yes.
right. He was gracious because he was going 12 miles an hour. Oh, he's up to 17 miles an hour over the speed.
We are a little different than these people here because they'll live in these neighborhoods. We live on Tom Darlington.
Yeah.
If I could offer, and Gary, I guess this would be a question for you. Because the Paradise Valley deal, it works, all right? Anybody goes down there, it works. Used to live down there, it works. But it's expansive. I'm just gonna ask this question from a cost data, if you will, to look at this in a grid form, if you will, in a square. And the square would be Tom Darlington north from Stagecoach, Stagecoach to Pima, Pima north to Cave Creek, Cave Creek to Darlington. If we did that as a community, all right, we're going to slow down the crazies. The ones that at 10 o'clock at night, when our police, the county disappears, and Cave Creek lights it up, and from the turn to the roundabout, I'll guarantee you, they're at least 50 to 60 miles an hour by the time they get there, right? So that's the question I would have, is if we could look at the data on those particular 4 points to be able to reduce the traffic flow to where we wouldn't have these crazies causing the problems that we have. So it's a reduced budget, obviously, but it's also a data point that we could look at from the standpoint of travel. I'm looking at, 3,000 cars per day. We're talking 3,000 cars per hour, almost. And I'm just looking at it because I love this community. I love it to death. I love having my grandchildren up here. I'll be damned if I'm gonna let them ride a bike. I'm sure as hell not gonna let them walk across the street. I can barely walk across Tom Darlington, and I'm still pretty able to do that. But I'm just asking the question, as we look forward, like you were talking, maybe it's a 10-year payout. I don't care. I'm just trying to think of opportunities and options for us as a community.
So one of the exciting things, I had talked a little bit about the downtown circulation plan. So that's Tom Darlington from Bloody Basin back to Bloody Basin on the other side, everything in there. So one of the options for that alternative is to reduce the lanes on Cave Creek as well as Tom Darlington to 1 lane in each direction, and then put parking and a bike path and pedestrian multi-use path. So that's exciting to me. To reduce this,
Here's the question I'm gonna ask you, because I'm going to push back, because I have 22 residents in our community, and if you put parking in front of our community, we can't see anything. We can't pull out.
well, we would be aware of where the communities, the driveways are and things of that nature. And you can put parallel parking, you can put diagonal parking. Okay, well, I mean,
Room now for our own parking on our own facility.
we'd have to look at that specific instance.
The
We'll
parking
come down
is,
and talk about it, but let me go back to Gary if I could. Is that an option for us to look at?
photo radar is an option. The mechanics of getting there is what our struggle is. grid system together to enforce the speed limits, and it would be very effective. I promise you, it would be very effective. But the end of the day, our struggle has been with MCSO and getting it changed administratively within MCSO and that court order, that federal court order, which discusses how they process tickets. Okay. So that's the struggle that we've been having.
Yes.
You're talking about photo radar. What's your enforcement capability on that? Because if I understand the law in Arizona, you have to be served. So when an officer pulls you over, he writes you a ticket, he signs it, you're served. But you get a photo radar in the mail.
So they do have a process associated with the processing of those tickets. And eventually you get it in the mail, and eventually you will be served by another third party. So there are
Okay, so
checks
you
and
got a third
balances.
party that goes out and
Yes, yes. There are third parties that do that.
Not-
Yeah.
If you want to talk about visitors, you write a ticket or you got photo radar for New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, you can just look at it and throw it in the mail.
Yeah.
You know, that's unenforceable unless you're gonna expedite it.
Yeah.
It costs extra.
Yes.
You know, the end of
Oh,
the day.
sorry.
The end of the day, Paradise Valley, and guess what? They have over a dozen resorts there. They have a lot of visitors. It's been very effective in slowing a lot of visitors within their community. Yep, yep. And I, you know, when we were investigating this, and we met with MCSO, the sheriff, the attorneys, the third party that does this throughout the state, photo radar throughout the state. We talked about the viability of this in Carefree, the effectiveness down in Paradise Valley, them having similar circumstances. A lot of seasonal people coming through, out-of-state folks visiting, and they said they get compliance. So they were very pleased with it.
So we had a hand over here for a while.
Is there any way to contract with, for instance, Scottsdale, if their photo radar up here, give them the authority, deem them the enforcement rights or whatever, and get them up here? They shoot on Stagecoach, I assume that's borderline, line, but if they've got all the systems there, can we contract them?
So you're thinking creatively and out of the box, and that's a question I asked Scottsdale, and they had no interest. With law enforcement today and the issues that they face, they have no desire to assume liability outside of their community. So yes, there's no desire for them to come up here and institute a photo radar program. So I explored that with them, with City of Scottsdale.
I think that a solution that, I think Cody might have thought, and maybe some from Stagecoach might have thought. I talked to officers on town and I said, hey, why don't you patrol our street, Stagecoach, madhouse is 15 miles an hour. I go, good, you know, because of the budgets, whatever. He says something about, why don't you buy an old police car and put it in. You know what I did? You know what I did? I have a little white van out there. It looks like one of those speed trap things. I put it out there
Yep.
with lights on it. You wouldn't believe it, everybody stopped. Did you see it?
I think that might be entrapment, but I'm not a lawyer.
No tickets involved in it, but they slowed down.
I'm not a lawyer,
Slow
so,
down to 15 miles an hour.
yes.
The new regulations for TSA that you can get on your license has opened up the opportunity for police departments to be able to serve people in other states. The reason I know that is, I was, okay? Because I was speeding in another state. They used to not be able to come after me, and they are. Called my attorney and goes, yep, since TSA has gone to the licensing on driver's license, it opens up all the states. Okay?
Well, that's something we could check into, absolutely. Yes.
One thing I would recommend is perhaps we put something on Google Maps where the delivery trucks can see on Stagecoach Pass, those trucks. He's looking at it, monitor.
That's what Officer Fleming
That's an option, yeah, I can look into that. Yeah,
You know, the other thing too, is that little sign that says no trucks over 7,000, it's not that big. And it's like, you know, you're doing 50 miles an hour, you wanna see that before you turn.
yeah,
Maybe we could put a bigger sign out there. I actually bought a sign, traffic sign, I was gonna stick out there, but then I'm, maybe I'm going too far.
You know, the I.
That 15-mile-an-hour sign that's right in front of our home,
A friend of ours put it up.
Yeah.
a friend of ours put it up,
So-
because we called and asked the city to put it back up, and somebody knocked it down.
gosh,
On the flip side, we hear complaints that there's too many signs.
yeah,
And remove those signs, so.
From who, the residents or the?
Residents.
yes,
It sounds like we've had as many questions about law enforcement
yes.
as we have this. Would it be possible to have an open meeting with MCSO where we can have a dialogue?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah,
So we, every 3 to 4 years, MCSO moves their commanders, their captains around. We just got a new captain, so he's getting the seat warm, but perfect time for him to come in, introduce himself, and answer questions to the community. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And pressure from the community is very impactful.
yeah, that would be a well-attended meeting, I'm sure, yeah. I'm all for that. Yes,
I assume your next steps is get community feedback, and eventually this will become a policy.
Correct.
Or work its way to the town council.
correct.
But I would hope, and I see the mayor's here, that the town council realize that this is a big issue here. For a lot of us, and that we would appreciate their kind of putting that into their agenda, if you will.
Yeah, thank you for that input, yep.
In fact, let me say, traffic speeding is probably the highest issue that gets the most complaints and comments in town. Good question.
Well, then obviously it's a big problem,
Yes,
that needs to be solved.
yes, and we're working towards that solution. Yes,
I'd like to remind the group that look at what Scottsdale has done in Paradise Valley. We may see this big thing that we envy and probably can never build. But the reality is they started something. I grew up in Paradise Valley. They started with a police force and to a point that was made earlier, they took it, they only had, I think at the time, 4 officers, but they had 5 cars. They would take one of the cars and put it on Lincoln Drive, hidden well enough so that you didn't see it until you almost on it. And that slowed people down, and I've watched over the decades how that little vacant police car, sometimes they even put a little body in it, but that's evolved to what Paradise Valley has today. And you know, the first journey of 1,000 miles starts with
it was
that.
step, yeah.
I think we've come up with some good ideas, and we should look to that as a North Star, and look toward that. But to the point, as I mentioned, taking excess vehicles and parking them on the side, it's not entrapment if you're not prosecuting, if you're not doing anything.
Yeah, I'll volunteer my name.
You should put the weight limit sign on your van and park that on Bloody Basin, right? All good advice. Yes, thank you.
I drove down Windmill, today, actually, south of Stagecoach. Noticed that they have these islands. They have signage saying, traffic calming ahead. And it's a long,
They're in the middle of the road?
no, it's right on the asphalt. It's a step up. You have to drive over, it's maybe quarter of a block long.
Oh, raised pedestrian islands. Yeah. I think what you're describing is raised pedestrian crosswalks? No? Or the other thing, yeah. Generally, those are used as crosswalks, but they don't have to be. They may be what's called the speed table. Yeah, so the same thing, you go up, you drive, and then you come down. So that's an option too. That's another tool in our toolbox.
Or less intense.
Sure.
other neighborhoods.
Yeah. And they're not as unesthetically as speed humps because they just look like the road. Yeah. That's definitely an option in our toolbox. Thank you for that. Yes.
I think you said, Gary, that what we spent $550 grand with MCSO. What if we spent $1 million with MCSO and we continue to slow down some of the traffic? I happen to live on the other end of town, okay? And the four-way stop sign at Peanut and Cave Creek is run by more people than any other stop sign in the state. And when you, and I'm not talking 15 miles an hour either. So, you know, it seems to me that maybe what we need to do is increase our expenditure at MCSO, get them to come here more often with more officers. All of these are nice things, they're very expensive. That's something that seems to me would be within the town budget.
So, it's a question I asked the past operation chief of MCSO. He was actually our commander, our last commander. His name was Brandon Monte, and he just retired from MCSO after close to 40 years of service. He said, "You can pay us more. We'll be glad to take your money, but there's such a shortage, and the thousands of calls that we get, officers will be drawn out of your service area. You're paying the liability of MCSO. You will not get the service. So it's better to target the areas where you need service, focus that to address the bad actors, rather than trying to pay more to get a higher level service that you will never receive, just because there are not enough deputies out there to cover the area." And that's the reality of the situation in almost every police department today. It's very difficult to hire deputies, and actually, they're looking at within 10 years, officers making close to 6 figures.
The only thing I'd like to add to that, so the intersection you're talking about is part of our Pima Road Improvement Project. So maybe we need a roundabout at Stagecoach as well as Cave Creek Road. A lot of people are thinking that's kind of the entryway into town at Pima and Cave Creek. So that might be a good way to slow everybody who's coming from the lake. So that's an option. Yes.
I know people don't like signals, I don't either, but why can't we get a signal at Cave Creek? That's like the busiest, worst place. We have Desert Mountain going on, Will was talking about it. We totaled a Range Rover and we were going slow. That's how bad that is. People just
The
fly.
girl ran the stop
Doesn't
sign.
matter. What about signals? Who's
So,
responsible for signals?
so
Signals are not the panacea, and actually Scottsdale's moving away from traffic signals. So Scottsdale Road and Dynamite, you would think naturally a traffic signal would perform well there. They've had such significant traffic accidents there that they're gonna abandon that signal and put in a roundabout. Why is that? Because there's one motion through, around. So it reduces the T-boning and the fatalities that they've encountered there. If we put a roundabout at Pima and Cave Creek Road, I guarantee you we will get T-bones there and we will get fatalities there. Probably the best solution would be a roundabout at that location, because you're forced to slow, go around, and you don't have to physically come to a stop. You yield to the roundabout. So the circulation pattern just keeps on moving around the roundabout. You don't physically have to stop. And with the traffic signal, you also have to stop all that traffic. So
How do they determine that roundabout across from what I call the Golden Arches in Fairfield Township? Why is
that is not a roundabout. That is, yeah, that's kind of a traffic circle to identify kind of a sense of entrance into the town center. That's what they did back in the late 90s, to kind of try and orient those that are not familiar with the town center, that this is the carefree central business district. So they did decorative pavement, they did a circle median there, but it's not a roundabout. If you look at the design of a roundabout, for example, what they're building in Scottsdale, they have the pork chops that force you around that. They have the curb medians, so trucks can go up on those medians, keeps you in the center. They have additional signage there that orients you to how to go around that. Those are not roundabouts. They are simply a circle median.
Yeah, I can attest to what Gary's saying. If you don't have to move around a roundabout, it's not a roundabout, or the traffic circles we have, you don't have to shift your traffic pattern. If you're going through Wampum, you can stay straight and not even know that you're going through a traffic circle. So their traffic circles are not roundabouts. And the other thing I wanted to let you know is that Scottsdale, their designers have to look at roundabouts first for any intersection. So, as Gary said, they're not looking at traffic signals anymore, or they may implement traffic signals, but it's not their priority. Their priority has to be roundabouts. So,
So Mark, I think probably all these are good ideas. The cheapest would be to write the speed limit on the highway. You don't really see it in the car, you see it in the house, you don't really see it. It's not a sign. Why do we have numbers everywhere, 25 or 35, whatever? It wouldn't cost that much at all. I'd see something tomorrow.
well, that's definitely an option, but I'm just not sure if it's really going to slow anybody down. Well, that's a good point. We can try that. We can get some stencils and give that a shot.
That, whenever there's a change in any community, there's opposition. And so you paint the big numbers on the street, I guarantee you, I will get the phone call the next day of people who are pissed off that we painted the speed limit on the street. Why the hell did you do that? There's a speed limit sign. Are you crazy? So once again, it's a balancing act. It's communicating with your neighbors. It's a process that we have to go through. That's what this policy identifies, is let's collectively work together. Because quite frankly, we're beat up every day over something. And so what we're trying to do is have neighbors work with one another on these solutions. We don't want to dictate these solutions. We want you guys to have ownership in these solutions. And by having ownership, that's talking together and designing these things. And then collectively, we can figure out how to fund them. And that's what this is about.
Is that 51% is that it's unanimous? You got one neighbor that doesn't like it, then what's the demotion?
There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it. What we're looking for is a majority approach to these things. Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, you're not going to make everybody happy. We know that. Democracy is not 100%.
Gary, is it 40% or 60%? I thought I read that somewhere.
I forgot what.
Yeah, I think it's 80% of the 1,000 foot area, but it's 60% of the neighborhood. And we also, I neglected to state too, we'd also like to have a letter from the HOA that's involved where the improvements are going to be, so that the community is in agreement with it also.
I have a question. The volume of traffic on Stagecoach has significantly increased. And it took me a while to figure out where all this traffic is coming from. And this gentleman back here who pointed to the fact that they're looking at their GPS and their Google.
Absolutely.
And what they're doing is.
Delivery guys,
Okay, well, it's not just delivery guys, it's anybody who wants to cut a few feet. So the first street that they turn, that they're able to turn east on, is that towards Stevens, Stagecoach House.
Right, and the second road is Bloody Basin. Yep, everybody's trying to get to the lake quicker than coming all the way up and cutting across. So those are cut-through streets, which are perfect or prime examples for traffic calming measures. Yeah. Yep. Sure. Yep.
well, I'm just wondering if we could try somewhere with the, just one place.
How do you, if they're not gonna follow the speed limit signs and follow the law, how is?
Well, there's only a couple of signs, there's a sign like in one end, and there's a sign 3 miles away somewhere else.
I can tell you this from a human factor perspective on the road is just more noticeable.
It's definitely an option. I'm willing to give that a try, absolutely.
Need more drafts, or this is the last draft?
We are gonna take it back and look at all the comments and update it as required. So there probably will be a new draft, and when that comes out, we'll go to our website and, or send out a newsletter saying, hey, this has been updated. This is what we wanna bring to town council. It's your last opportunity to look at it.
Meeting will probably have some update or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yep, absolutely.
So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter,
That's right.
please subscribe. You could, that's the address there. And that's how we push out these notifications for meetings and updates to documents like this. So we will send out a notification when this document is updated. If you have additional comments after tonight, something hits you in the middle of the night, email Mark. Mark,
I don't recall giving out my phone number. I gave out my email, but not my phone number. And we appreciate y'all coming. We understand everybody has things to do, so I really appreciate you showing up. And I appreciate that. Like I said, this is, I know there's a speed issue, but we've never had a group complaining about Stagecoach. So now